Well, that little musical interlude there by the Jaggernauts means it must be time for me to pop up on Facebook and YouTube over here. So, sure, let's do that. Hey, welcome. It's another beautiful morning up north here on Lake Wissota. I'm Pat Kreitlow. It is January 28th, 2026. And this, again, for the uninitiated, is just a good opportunity for me to do one of the many interviews I do throughout the course of the day for Up North News. But why not do one of them live like we did on the old radio show? Keeps me on my toes, gives the guests a chance to answer questions in real time. And then coming up, I'll have a little do something calendar of events and today's history lesson and some of the first answers to our question of the week, which is all about data centers. And so here comes that shameless personal plug. Sign up for the newsletter over at upnorthnewswi.com. Click subscribe up in the top banner, or go to upnorthnewswi.com/newsletter and get that Sunday morning wrap-up that I do of Wisconsin political news, and, of course, get our question of the week as well. So our guest today is Fred Clark. He's one of the Democrats running for the 7th Congressional District. That's the district that I ran in 2012 and lost to Sean Duffy, thanks to a gerrymandering and a whole bunch of other factors. But Sean Duffy abruptly left the congressional seat in 2019, and Tom Tiffany filled it in with a special election in 2020. But now he is leaving that post and is running for governor, where just last night he got the endorsement of President Donald Trump. It seemed rather odd that it took from September until the end of January for Trump to endorse Tiffany, given that they are two peas in a pod on every issue, including Tiffany working to overturn the will of the voters in 2020 so that Trump could claim Wisconsin. Tiffany was as much a part of that conspiracy as anybody, with his signing on to a Texas lawsuit that, if successful, would have thrown out your votes from 2020 and let a court decide who gets Wisconsin electoral votes. So it was odd that it took Trump this long to endorse Tiffany, given that, a couple of years back, he endorsed Tony Weed before we'd even heard of Tony Weed. And guess what? He just did the same thing last night with Michael Alfonso. Who you say? That would be Sean Duffy's son-in-law, 25 years old, a rather scant career resume of construction work and podcast producer, and I think can accurately be described as Florida man runs for Congress, because Michael Alfonso has an active registration in Florida, and he voted there in November 2024. He has an inactive voter registration in Madison from when he was a student. He has an active registration from the Hayward area with an address that's listed to a home that belongs to Sean Duffy, his father-in-law, and his wife. And the far-right website, Wisconsin Right Now, has been reporting on this, and they've made clear they don't have any axe to grind with Michael Alfonso. It's just weird that he gets in the race, and suddenly there's this, Northwoods PAC, and I put it in finger quotes because it's registered in Alabama, that suddenly came out of nowhere with $1.5 million in direct mail and other advertising on Michael Alfonso's behalf. And now he's getting President Trump's endorsement when there are other Republicans running with a longer track record of residency and experience in the 7th Congressional District. But for the moment, Michael Alfonso, the unknown Florida voter, is the person who's got the Trump endorsement on the Republican side for the 7th Congressional District to take over that seat that Tom Tiffany is leaving to run for governor. Well, there are Democrats running on that as well. There's Chris Armstrong. There's Ginger Murray. I've interviewed both of them. We'll be posting those interviews on Up North News. But we certainly have to make sure we take care of the third candidate that we've talked to before on the radio show and who joins us live now. And that would be Fred Clark, the former state assembly rep, who now lives up in the Ashland Bayfield area and is joining us from Holcomb today, where he's been on the campaign trail. Fred Clark, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Pat. Really well, thanks. Good to see you. And yeah, I'm not too far from you today. I'm sitting on a cabin on the frozen Chippewa River. Just
right. Yeah. I know. Well, and as you know full well, getting around the 7th District is no small feat. You're going to put a lot on the odometer. There's a lot of phone calls to make. Even the 3 Democrats who are in the race are all in different parts of the district. And in talking to Chris Armstrong out in Hudson, Ginger Murray down in New Lisbon, they too acknowledge, as I know you have as well, it's such an immense district. It's hard to know where all the candidates are, what county parties are active, and everything. It's a challenge, but it's still, it's one that I willingly took on, all those years ago, and one that you're embracing right now.
Well, it is, and you got to get out there. And honestly, the easy thing to do is to go to Democratic county party meetings. They'll always have you, but you've got to go beyond that. So this morning, just 45 minutes ago, I was going to meet a couple of folks for coffee down in Holcomb. Well, the coffee shop was closed today, so we went over to the Cenex. No seating there, but the manager was good enough to offer her little 8x8 office with 3 chairs in it, where we had our meeting. And that's retail politics right there.
Absolutely. I know it well. I know that when you drive around the district that much, you know where to make your pit stops. And that is most definitely one of them. So we're all familiar with getting around. So like you said, you're talking to folks here. The primary is in August, so we've got a lot of road to cover from now till then. So I'll get to your campaign in a bit, but it is interesting that you've got the president already weighing in on the Republican side of things, as Todd Albo tells us on the comment section. With all wards reporting Tom Tiffany is the projected winner of the GOP gubernatorial primary, the lone vote cast by the supreme leader seems to be the deciding vote. All right, that's not the world's biggest surprise that Trump endorsed Tom Tiffany in the governor's race, but it is rather unique that he also last night endorsed, this Michael Alfonso, this 25-year-old who's Sean Duffy's son-in-law, when there are other Republicans in the race. What do you think of the president getting involved in an open Republican primary up there in your district already?
Well, I all 4 of those candidates had been pitching themselves endlessly to the president, I think, to try to seek his endorsement. So they were going to hitch their wagon to his star, rise or fall. And I think it's a tactical mistake by the president, to be honest, not to allow more time to figure out who is actually going to be the strongest candidate. But there it is. So there will be no mistake that the lead candidate in this race right now is just going to sign off on whatever this administration wants to do. And voters are going to have a choice to decide whether they want somebody who will independently represent them or simply write a blank check to this president.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is that a year ago, we would have said that if Trump had made an endorsement to somebody, that, that they were on easy street in terms of, winning a primary election. But now, given where the president's approval ratings are, given the, in my word, not yours, the shit-tastic way that he has handled, these attempted military occupations of American cities, having the Trump endorsement in a primary, especially by somebody unknown, that's no longer a guarantee. A lot can happen between now and August where people are starting to sour on Donald Trump, even in northern Wisconsin.
Absolutely. I mean, look back to the Supreme Court election a year ago, April, and the endorsement of Elon Musk was probably the best money for the Susan Crawford that could have been spent, because it all went her way in large part because of that. So that's absolutely right. And Mr. Alfonso, I'm sure he's a sincere, well-intentioned young man, but his messaging has been completely tone deaf, especially around the events of Minneapolis, where he put out a video last night. Basically, he seems to be obsessed with communism and trying to paint what happened in Minneapolis as a fault of liberal, out-of-touch radical communists who are making life hard. You know what? People who are watching what's happening right across the river in our neighboring state are smart enough to know that this is a disaster brought on by this administration.
I believe the term that you're too kind to use would be sucking up, because in Alfonso's response on social media last night, he writes, "It is my greatest honor to accept this endorsement from President Donald J. Trump. He is truly the greatest president of all time. And I pledge to be a steadfast MAGA warrior for the people of Wisconsin's 7th District. There is nothing in that statement, Fred Clark, that tells us that Michael Alfonso would be any kind of an independent voice for the entire 7th Congressional District.
Yep, and all I can say to that is game on. I think that they are paving the pathway to an upset in November, and voters are going to have a really clear choice to make in this election. That's getting more and more apparent every day.
So now, for the time that you've been in the race, and of course have been getting around the district, obviously people want to talk about, Trump this or Trump that, and ICE this and ICE that. But there are issues that really matter to folks right at home, right over the kitchen table. Tell me about the concerns you're hearing when you talk to voters in these early weeks of the campaign.
Well, it is so clear. I was in Spooner yesterday, visiting business owners on Walnut Street in Spooner, wonderful downtown. Many of them, a number of them, talked to me about the impact of tariffs on their businesses, and that so if you're running a retail shop selling clothing, you're buying inventory 6 months to 8 months in advance. And what these folks are telling me is that a lot of our product already has 10 to 20% price increases built into it because of tariffs. The shippers and wholesalers are eating some of that cost. The retailers are eating some of that cost. Some of it's being passed on to customers. But the hardest part for them is, not only are you guessing what people are going to want to buy 8 months from now in a normal time, now you don't even know what the tariff is going to be on that product when you order it. This is just, it's creating chaos and uncertainty for business, which is exactly what business doesn't want to have in order to be successful. So I've heard that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard about that from business owners. Whether you're exporting or importing, this tariff war is a chaotic disaster for the economy. And read the Constitution. It is so clearly stated that that's the role for Congress, not the president, to set tariff policy. So it's one of the many things that I want to get into Congress and basically take back so that we're actually doing our job.
Do you feel like when the race really starts to get going, that those economic issues will take more of center stage, or are you thinking we're just always going to be in for the Trump show and whatever the latest distraction is? And I certainly don't mean to paint, the cold-blooded killing of 2 people so far in Minneapolis as a distraction, but I mean, the national issues as opposed to what people are looking for in a local representative. It's got to be a bit of a challenge to try to keep a local perspective on things with everything that, Trump does all over us.
Well, it is. And I will tell you that, the economy and healthcare have been number 1 and number 2, and there's a whole lot of responsibility this administration has in just making both of those situations so much worse. We're all going to be paying more for healthcare or having our access to healthcare reduced because of the impact on the rural health system of these cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to the Affordable Care Act. But what has been surprising to me, even just in the last 3 days, is how many people are paying attention to what's happened in Minneapolis and who recognize that this is, we always imagine the federal government being the source of stability and peace in a crisis, and that they're the ones that are going to come in and keep the peace. But for the first time in the lifetime of any of us, now it's the federal government is the source of that chaos. And people are recognizing that across the political spectrum.
And it sure makes you wonder, where are all the Second Amendment folks now? I mean, you've got the president himself essentially, disparaging Second Amendment rights, and you've got Second Amendment people upset with the president that they normally support. And so, for people that always talked about, well, we need the right to bear arms in case of government tyranny, I just get a feeling like there's a lot of folks up in our neck of the woods that feel a little uncomfortable right now at the fact that they've warned us about a tyrannical government for years and years, and now it seems to be coming from their side of the aisle.
I know, and the NRA finally put out I would call it a tepid statement that let's not blame this guy just because he was carrying a gun. Well, how about this was the federal government overreach that you were warning us about for years, and it's right on our doorstep. And Pat, I think so many of those spineless Republicans in Congress who have still been afraid to make a public statement, which is most of them, you can bet how many of them were calling the White House like panicked school kids over the last 3 days, begging them to walk this back, because they're hearing it from their constituents. You better believe your bottom dollar. They're hearing it every day from thousands of the people they represent, and they're still, most of them, still too afraid to speak out.
Let's talk about healthcare for a sec and the expired tax credits that helped make health insurance more affordable through the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. Now, you did have that House vote where Derek Van Orden from the 3rd District and a little more than a dozen other Republicans essentially, flipped. Although I've said before, I think that was more a vote of convenience, that they felt pretty comfortable that the Senate was not going to take this up. But we had Congressman Mark Pocan from the 2nd District here not too long ago saying we should still keep pressure on the Senate because people are really feeling these higher prices, and although the credits have expired, it is still very much worth it to try to keep the pressure up to put the affordability back into health insurance.
It absolutely is. I mean, this is affecting farmers and small business owners and self-employed people, and people maybe a little bit younger than me who are in that 55 to 65 age group, pre-Medicare, for whom the Affordable Care Act is really their best option, and we've just made that inaccessible. We do need to keep the pressure up. We were running a petition that I think we had over 800 signatures for, to urge Senator Baldwin and Senator Johnson to restore those tax credits. We'll see if that's going to happen, but this is one of the dozen self-inflicted wounds that the Republican Party is creating right now.
We're talking to Fred Clark, and his website is Clark4WI. That's ClarkFORWI.com. And, of course, Fred Clark for Wisconsin on Facebook as well. So let's wrap things up by, moving forward. Any issues that I missed, other things that people are talking about, what else you expect to be coming up over these next, few weeks of winter travel around northern Wisconsin?
Yeah. Well, I'm out right now every day that I can, and I think, people are paying attention. The constitutional rights that we're guaranteed, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, people are following that stuff right now. So that's going to continue to be an issue. But what I'm doing right now is taking the case to the whole spectrum of electors. And I'm holding town halls where it isn't just the Democrats. We're inviting everybody in town to come out, tell me what you think. You can listen to me as a candidate, but more importantly, I want to listen to the voters and understand what they need. We're not spending money on slick TV ads and mailers. Now is the time for any candidate who's serious to actually get out and be talking to people.
There you go. Fred Clark, one of the Democratic candidates in the 7th Congressional District. The website is Clark4WI.com. Fred, always good to touch base with you. Safe travels. Enjoy it. I can already tell you're enjoying it, but continue to enjoy it anyway. And we'll catch up again real soon.
Hey, Pat, really appreciate it. Have a good one, man. Stay warm.
All right. Thank you. Will do. You as well. It's again Fred Clark there talking to us. Now, still ahead, I've got today's history lesson and also our Do Something calendar and our question of the week, all part of another beautiful morning here up north. I'm Pat Kreitlow. All right, let's do today's history lesson here, shall we? I'm going to be putting links in the comment sections as always, because it's fun to start to link videos now and not just the radio clips that we used to do. But on this day 3 years ago, Miley Cyrus was all alone but not lonely with her anthem Flowers. That was the #1 hit this day in 2023. We'll put up a link to TLC because Creep was the #1 song this day in 1995. I always like this one, 1984. Thanks to a ban by the BBC, the debut single from Frankie Goes to Hollywood instantly went to #1. That, of course, was Relax. And finally, it was on this day in 1985, an all-night recording session right after the American Music Awards led to the USA for Africa anthem, We Are the World, to raise funds for famine relief in Ethiopia. And I know we've talked about the documentary that was done, a year or so ago, about that all-night session with Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie and the others who tried to get it all organized. Highly recommend that documentary if you haven't seen it already. We've got on the birthday list both NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys represented. Joey Fatone is 49, Nick Carter 46, Sarah McLachlan is 57 years old today, Justice Amy Comey Barrett is 54, and actor Alan Alda from MASH turns 90 years old today. On this day in 1959, Vince Lombardi was hired to coach the Green Bay Packers. On this day in 1915, an act of Congress created the United States Coast Guard. On this day, 40 years ago today, can't believe it's been that long since the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded shortly after liftoff, killing the 7 astronauts on board. I was a senior at UW-Eau Claire. I was station manager of WUEC, the student radio station, and I'd just been at a job interview. So I was, pretty rare for a college senior, dressed up in slacks, shirt, tie, dress shoes. I am in my room, have this little 10-inch black and white TV that's connected to the cable system on campus, and see the CNN report all about this. And I right away just ran right back out the dorm, down the hill, and you know the hill I'm talking about at UW-Eau Claire, on a slick morning in dress shoes. I can't believe I didn't break my leg, to run across the footbridge and into the Fine Arts Building and to help get the coverage going on the Challenger explosion 40 years ago today. And finally, on this day in 1958, the Lego Company patented the design of its Lego bricks, still compatible with any bricks that are produced today, and all still very much guaranteed to cause pain unlike any other if you step on them barefoot in the middle of the night. Yeah, that's exactly how these things happen. Let's see. On our question of the week, it looks like this. In 10 years, come on, get back up there. You can do this. There you go. In 10 years, what kind of grade will Wisconsin get on the growth of data centers? That was the question in our Sunday morning newsletter. Will Wisconsin get an A? We'll look back and see we handled the matter of data centers better than other states. B, we'll have data centers, but there will be a few examples of poor planning. C, it'll be a mixed bag, including some data centers that turned out to be wasteful or used up too much water, electricity. Or will we get a D or an F? And we will give ourselves a grade that shows we regret the way we handled the growth of data centers in Wisconsin. Here's a sample of some of your answers from Kathy. These data centers have been allowed to happen so fast and seemingly without due public process and discussion, I fear we've shot ourselves in the foot again. From SHRM, states must work together to establish mandatory best practices and requirements that data centers must be held accountable. Severe penalties must be in place if data centers fail to comply. It's like I wrote that answer myself. That is the one thing I always harp on is standards mean nothing if you can't enforce them. And in this case, if you exceed a certain amount of electric or water usage, you get shut down, which gets to be very expensive. So maybe abide by the rules you agree to. And finally, from Gene, who says data centers will go the way of the Greyhound dog tracks. How many of those do you still see around the state? A very excellent point indeed, Gene, because the Greyhound tracks were really just starting to get going. And then that court order came that allowed for gambling casinos on indigenous tribal lands, and the dog tracks had pretty much no hope after that. On our Do Something calendar of events, tomorrow is Drinks with Dems trivia with Fitchburg Progress. That's at 6:45 tomorrow at the Delta Beer Lab to answer some trivia questions, talk about what's going on. So look for the table marker tomorrow and join Something Blue, Fitchburg Progress, Drinks with Dems. That's tonight, Wednesday at 6:45 at the Delta Beer Lab. All right, well, time for me to go do my job, my day job over at Up North News. I'm going to take this Fred Clark interview and do some stuff with it, turn it into news stories. And then on Friday, come on back, 9 o'clock. Yes, Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be here because it's Friday, but it'll be a bit of a civic media refugee reunion as we welcome in Todd Alba and Jane Matnair as well, live right here, Facebook and YouTube, 9 o'clock on Friday morning. So be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Head over to upnorthnewswi.com and get yourself signed up. Thanks for taking a little time today to hear about some of the things that I hope help you feel a bit more empowered rather than overwhelmed at what's all going on in the big old world as we have it today. Thanks for being here. I'll see you again soon for another beautiful morning up north.